The unusual.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
To meet you.
Sorry I'm late.
Right on time as far as I'm concerned.
If it's 6:07, I'm on time. You know, that's hard to time, and I said, but they have like usual, they're having 7 minutes after the hour, I gotta do it. Take over.
We almost.
Are we rolling?
Yep.
Okay. So, first thing we have is we have Robert Olivarez, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. With Flashpoint here, and he's gonna talk a little bit about the Old Earthstone property. And we probably ought to just go around and introduce ourselves. I know you already just did. But I'm Sid Fleming, I'm the city manager. We met just a couple weeks ago.
Leaf House, City Council Ward 3, and I actually, that's my ward where Ursuline property is.
Okay.
Across the street.
Yeah.
You can hire her. She keeps her well.
We're already hired a bunch.
Dave Schnell, Councilor.
Trent Shaw, Councilman Ward 2.
I used to go.
And I'm Robert Olivarez. I'm representing Flashpoint, which is actually, we're changing the name. We're changing the name to Arista or Arista, depending on, it's actually the Greek, not the Latin translation, but the Greek.
Did you spell that?
Arista.
Well, that's almost my name.
That's perfect, right?
I didn't remember the first part.
Yeah. So we are gonna, we are currently, I mentioned it before, that we're probably gonna rebrand. It was never really very excited or proud of the Flashpoint name. It everybody kind of picked up on it a different way. Like, is that chaos? Like, is that the spark point of the grenade? Or is that the little button on the end of the bullet? Like, what is a Flashpoint? You know, so I thought it would kind of clear things up a little bit and be more holistic in nature if we kind of didn't have that as our name. So we're currently in the rebranding process. We should have what they call collateral available, for me to share at the next meeting if needed. Just our name and gloves, t-shirts and caps, fidget spinners and whatever else they're going to order. But I do represent, they're part of a larger company that's based out of Florida and New York. And, Paola the Paola site, or the Ursuline Academy in particular, was chosen for several different reasons. One, we analyze need and what we are and what we're going to be building.
Now, you said you have a lot of, is it you or is it the area or what area? You feel the area has a need?
Yeah, when we look at, when we do, marketing research, we start looking at beds available per populace, and the bed available, Kansas in general, is I don't want to say lacking, but underrepresented. Underserved. I know that a lot, speaking to some people like the MCMC, that some of those people end up getting that need services that are local, end up getting served in like St. Louis or in other cities kind of far away. What we know is that, research shows that the door-to-door policy works best for people suffering from substance use disorder. So, they're at the hospital, they get stabilized, and then the shorter amount of time between their treatment, better the outcomes just are. And so I think that's good. We'll be able to help alleviate some of the stuff that goes on in the emergency room, like some of the backup that may happen there when they're in a crisis, when it comes to detoxification and stabilization. We're going to have 80 beds total, but don't let that scare you. We're not expecting all 80 beds to be filled.
Are you going to use just the Ursuline Mother House itself, or are you going to use the little building off the big?
That's a great question. And what I'll tell you is that the answer is we're gonna use both. Right away, we're only gonna use the mother house. And the reason being is, there's what used to be called Monica Hall is it's under duress. It needs a roof, it needs some work, and to be honest, we didn't even consider that to be on our first licensure. We wanted our first licensure to be the mother house and really kind of get that and the grounds around it kind of up to snuff and looking pretty. And we really fully expect the Ursuline Academy to be the center jewel in the crown. All the centers that we're building in the country, which will be 10 total. And that 10 is kind of it's inaccurate reporting, a little bit of fake news, because every one of those 10 facilities is also going to have a PHP, which is partial hospitalization, an intensive outpatient, a MAT, which is medical assisted treatment, an OTP, which is opioid treatment program, and an outpatient all attached to it, right? We're not going to do that here. I don't think it'd be fair to the community, number one, to have 200 or 300 clients and an outpatient service that have all cycled through our mother house, right? And to have that cycle through in your community, and now they're out and about looking for apartments for that. I don't think that's a very good look, right? So we're gonna do that in Overland Park.
So everybody's looking for a place to rent.
Right, so we're looking at Overland Park, as that being kind of where so here we'll service detoxification and residential treatment. And then the minute they finish that, they will either go to Overland Park, to one of our facility there, or they will go home or elsewhere or wherever they go. Well, the intention is not to turn them loose into your community. I know there's also been some speculation about what we're doing over there, right? There's this big roll-off green dumpster out front. This is what I can tell you, and there's really no decisions that happen outside of my knowledge. So all the information I'm giving you is as current as it was 15 minutes ago when I got off the phone with some other workers and some other leaders. We're working very closely with the diocese to reclaim all of the religious artifacts on the grounds. So what that means is the statues will be going to St. Mark's. We've been working very closely with a group of gentlemen from there, and also just recently, Sister Ava Maria, which, what a great name. I knew she meant business when I heard her name. So Sister Ava Maria is a historian. She actually just came to diocese here from Cuba. So she just got out in time before the kind of rest started there. But she'll be documenting all of the removal of all the statues and then where they land, right? It was really important for us, and I'll say for me, especially that, the people paid for everything that lives on that property. See the church owned it. This isn't blasphemy when I say it. And the people, that the people pay tithe, the people pay in the basket. That belongs, and the hope was, of course, as I would expect, is that if it doesn't exist on that property, that it still exists in an institution that represents their faith and what they were giving to. So all of the statues, including the ones in the grotto, are going to be returned to the church and used locally. So St. Mark's is pretty local. And then there's a new church, I believe it's called St. Paul's, that's going to be being built in this side of Olathe. And they're going to be using the altars and the stained glass in the actual architectural foundation of the church.
Are you taking out the chapel?
Well, that's the thing. I don't think it belongs to us. We can't, and the other part is the population that we serve is such that we can't just have people coming into the chapel, right? Because we're gonna have people there that are gonna be under duress. And of course, we don't want to frisk every person that comes in the door. That would be pretty unbecoming. So, you know, how do we keep our population safe and then the community safe at the same time? So it's really, was our intention to utilize that space, even though we can't right now because it's not fire sprinkled, so I want everybody to know in here that we're not using it. But that we're actually, all of those things are going back to the church, and the church is gonna use the altars and the stained glass, and they're gonna actually use it pretty close. I think it said it's about 22 or 21 minutes from the Ursuline Academy to where the new site is. And Dennis Wilbur, I think Dennis Wilbur is a gentleman that I've been working with from the church there. That's working on that, and Mike Mahoney and is representing St. Mark's, and they're taking the external features, the statues and whatnot. We're gonna, the cemetery belongs to the church. We'll probably put a shadow box in it, around it, so that people can feel private. They don't have our clients being looky-loos all the time when somebody's going there to pay respects. So we're gonna make sure that that is honored and revered. St. Mark's is gonna kind of take the statues out of the grotto, which is gonna leave me in a very precarious position, to be perfectly honest, because I'll have this thing that the nuns built. However, I won't have any of the religious artifacts to go with it, nor the donations, you know, donated statues and whatnot that made it an actual grotto. So I'll have this space, and I'll have all this kind of lava rock, if anybody's been there, that'll have been all busted up and chipped up. So I don't know what the appropriate fix for that will be. But I'm working with we're working with an organization called King Richards. If anybody's familiar, they deal exclusively in the reclamation of religious artifacts all around the world. And they're coming to make sure that everything is done the way that it's supposed to.
Have you reached out to any of your Slim sisters?
So I hear there's one here, like in town, right, is what I've heard. I personally have not. I've kind of relied on the group that we're working with, because I really don't want it to seem too forward. However, Sister Ava Maria is not, she doesn't think it's forward at all. She's gonna be reaching out and finding that sister and really doing everything she can to involve her in the project. We don't want to operate in a bubble. We also don't want to operate under a microscope either, but we definitely don't want to operate under a bubble. So, you know, the area is still open and people want to come by and look at renovations and see what we're doing. All we've really done up to this far is we've started painting, and we've ripped up carpet, and to see kind of like what we're left with. We're going to be installing new flooring. We'll be updating the nurses station that's on the 3rd floor. We'll be modernizing that to code for what's best practices for that level of care. We'll be updating faucets. You know, we've updated air conditioning so far. We've tried to keep up with the grounds. I don't know that we've mastered that. I don't know how long it'll take us. I get little love letters from the city's department regarding it, and but we're doing the best we can. And I think,
You need to hire a gardener.
well, we have a landscaper in you know, I haven't passed judgment yet, but we'll see how that goes. We're gonna keep doing the best that we can. I know that there'll be times a year where there's nothing to mow because everything's dead. And or there'll be snow. I actually was stationed in Wichita for about 18 months. So I know those Kansas winters can be fun. You know, we're really trying to put a lot of intentionality in each thing that we do, whether it's working with the diocese or reached out to sit on a couple of things and trying to work closely with the community. I know it's a big change, culturally for Paola. This has been a green space for a long time. That the community has used, I see the kids on their bikes, and I see people walking their dogs, and I see the people cutting across that area. And we'll have to put some safeguards in place, we'll have to have some sort of a barrier to protect our clients and protect the community, quite frankly honest. We'll try to do that in a way that's as classy as possible, and blends in with the normal architecture of the building that we're working with in the community. But also still kind of provide some area for some green space for the community. We're not gonna, I'll be honest, we're not gonna fence in 30 acres. It's not gonna happen.
Did you buy the entire property, even the field to the side?
This one. This one. So that's why I said, we're not gonna fence in 38 acres, like that would be impossible. Not impossible, but for us, improbable. So, so we're gonna do our best to create an area where, we're not liable, but we provide some great solutions. So it's all on our insurance, or become a risk to us or to our clients. But also, again, it's like, what's the fence for? It's like, is it to keep people in or keep people out? It's like, well, kind of both, right? We're protecting both sides of that fence. And the other part, I was actually talking to my wife. It's the first time she's seen the site. She was out here. Today was the first time she saw the site. I said, it's. She said, "You're gonna fence this?" And, yeah, yes, relax. Let me tell you, it's. We have to create a barrier. I don't want. We're not a lockdown facility. We'll never be a lockdown facility. We won't be putting people in restraints. We won't be doing any of those things. Therefore, somebody can walk out at any time they want. Now, if they're under duress and they're withdrawing from opioids or alcohol or benzos or whatever the drug of choice is, I really don't want them just running loose in your town. And that fence does provide a barrier until we can have law enforcement come down and visit with them and see if they want a right to the airport or if they want to stay here, and participate in treatment. So, it's a fine line for us to dance on, not feeling or looking institutional, but at the same time keeping the community and our residents safe. If we have, we'll talk as honestly. Of course, I'm here. I want you guys on my team. That's why I'm here. But I'm going to speak to you as honestly as possible too. And if we have, let's just say half capacity, we're at 40% or 50%, so we have 40 clients, and they're all at different levels of substance use disorder. Chances are that they didn't get all of those legally, right? So that means they're attached to an element that you probably don't want coming to your town to help them, right? So the more barriers that we can set up and the safer that we do this, just the better I think it is for everybody. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to provide some sort of barrier. I'd rather not. We don't live in that kind of world. Not realistically. Ideologically, it works great. We are going to be putting in, we'll probably put some sort of plaque or something in each one of the stations where they remove the external statues. We'll be putting something in the ground there to mark what had been benefactor to us with. So we have all the statues by name, and part of Sister Maria, part of what she's doing is putting a name and time frame to each one of those statues, and we'll be putting some sort of marker to mark that they existed and that they had been there. It's important. Exactly where they have, the marker is going to be right where they were. Oh, yes, it's the same marks, yes. And what's really kind of cool is both have both entities, St. Mark's and St. Paul's, have both expressed their desire to include and let it be known when those get moved over, like when they actually get installed, because they'll be moved before they're installed. When they're moved, that the community of Paola knows that they're getting installed at St. Mark's. More importantly, when the church gets dedicated in Olathe, that that there's also another announcement because of all the things from the Ursuline that will be used there. And I think that's, if I remember right, they're gonna break ground next summer. So it'll probably about they're gonna keep them safekeeping. So I'm sure everything that I said brought up some questions, so I would love to field any questions. We're wide open books, so if you guys would like to know, I'd love to answer for you guys.
So it's kind of an at-will facility, people
Correct.
voluntarily come.
Correct. It'll be voluntary, it'll be insurance based and cash pay based. So we won't have Medicaid, Medicare at our facility.
So then, and you said that people can leave if they, since it's voluntary, they can leave. So I live right on the street and I know it's gonna be a tough sell for my neighbors, some of them. So how do I answer to them? You know, how are they gonna be able
Sure.
to be safe? How will they know their kids are okay to play outside,
Right.
that kind of
Well,
stuff?
I think the first thing that we would do, and I don't know if there's anybody here from the police department, but the very, very, very first thing we're gonna do is call a wellness check. The other thing I think that's gonna be before that is that we're pretty adept at keeping people in treatment. A lot of experience of people wanting to leave AMA or against medical advice. So we're gonna do everything we can to keep them on the grounds. While we're doing that, we're contacting the police department and letting them know that we may have an individual, we can't release names, but however, this is what a person is wearing, and this is, you know, what they generally look like, and they don't belong in the community. And we do not have a problem saying that. We do that well, every treatment center has some sort of protocol. My desire is to work very, very closely with the police department, not only on protocols that operate to that nature, but, you know, active shooter training. I mean, we have this great big huge facility. It's pretty awesome that we get to like you know, get to work at, which is pretty neat. But there's also great opportunities for fire department training, police training, active shooter training, and there's all these opportunities that I want it to be more open to than I'm not saying more than it has been in the past, but you know, it's been a long time since it's been up and running. So for a lot of people, or for some of the people that live in this community, they don't even know what it was like when it was operating, right? Because it's been basically closed since 2001. So, you know, I think it could be a healthy hub of activity, and you know, the projection is that we open with at least 40 hires, right? That's bare minimum kind of, we're gonna need 40 people to run the place for a pay period, you know, I mean, at the bare minimum. We're really looking closer to 130 at max. That's a lot of jobs. Now, of course, some of those jobs will fall outside of Paola, and people will be driving in, and you know, I'm not interested in stealing from other rehabs or other places that work here. I think there's plenty of pie for everybody. I'm looking at stealing staff or clients. But it's just we can really all exist. There's enough need in the United States today. We will be bringing some people from out of state. We are going to look at insurance panels in Missouri, Arkansas, Nebraska, excuse me, Oklahoma, kind of in that area. You know, those will be other insurance panels that we're looking at down the line, but initially we're just going to be starting with Kansas.
Facility, did you say you have?
This will be our first with this group. This will be our very first with this group.
So what size communities do these facilities usually end up in? Smaller ones like ours or larger facilities like Overland Park?
Great question. I think that the answer would be both, and I think it depends on the type of treatment that's being provided. I would say during the 90s and 2000s, there was a really big push to have kind of a ranch style environment, with ponds and running water and lots of people and kind of getting people far away from home. They were like destination style treatment. We have a lot of those in Texas where I live. That was kind of the model, and then it kind of shrunk down, and you saw like old banks being turned into treatment centers and treatment centers popping up in strip malls and in old grocery stores and stuff like that. And then there was no green space, or not very much. And I think now there's more of a hybrid model that's really being utilized, where there is some green space, but there's also a heavy emphasis on clinical. There's not a lot of free time, it's all structured time. And it all has some sort of clinical tie to it, but there's more stuff being done outside. So to answer the question, I've opened centers in Aquila, Texas, which there's 300 people. And then we've opened stuff in, we just set a site in San Marcos, Texas, which was, connected to Austin, which is pretty big. Last summer, we opened one in Jackson, Mississippi, on the outskirts of Jackson. So it just kind of depends where the need, and then of course the facility exists. Because, we got lucky finding the nursing academy. It's a beautiful place. It's striking, really, and normally we wouldn't go first site that way, but I think we're up for the challenge. It's a beautiful site, and I think we're going to do.
What age do you cater to?
So
Is it a broad age group?
very broad, 18 to 85. This is the thing is like, who needs it? More importantly, who wants it, right? Whoever wants it, we want to service them for sure. And then those that need it, we want to try to convince them that they need it and get them to a place where they want it. And that's really what we're after. I know that there's a lot of centers that they want to service, 18 to 27 or 22 to 35, but we're going to be much more broad than that, male and female. We have the elevator, we have the ramps, we have the stuff. If somebody's in a wheelchair, we want to help them. If somebody's, on crutches, we're going to have, I don't know if, so our doctors group that we're working with is called IPC. It's Integrated Physicians Council, I believe.
Where are they located?
So they're located all over. Dr. Adma, who's the kind of owner and operator of IPC, actually started his practice or his practicums at MCMC 20 years ago. So he's on their board. He's has admitting privileges there, which is something that was important to us. That if someone were to be compensated physically, or medically, that we could get them to the hospital right away with admitting privileges. So that
Do you have an on-site doctor?
so they will be so that group will be on site, couple, probably initially, not very much, probably 8 to 10 hours a week. But we'll have a nurse practitioner and we'll have a full nursing staff there. The nurse prac will probably be on call at night. But the nursing will be 24 hours. And what we're looking for by our design is 24 hours with RNs. And if we utilize LPCs, it'll be in kind of a med handout type of role, not in a delivery of care. Assessments can only be done by an RN hire. And if somebody comes into detox, they have these things called CEWA and CAL scores, which are basically how we measure withdrawal symptoms, either of alcohol or opioids. And then we make med adjustments. So only an RN or above can make that assessment below an RN. So we'll have to have an RN or above on staff at all times.
You have a therapist, a psychologist.
So so the IPC group will have psychiatrists, we'll have psychologists, we'll have psychiatric nurse practitioners. We will have clinicians. It'll be a high clinical model, will mostly be a clinical model. This isn't day camp, this is hard treatment that we're going to be doing, like hard clinical work. We will have master's level clinicians that will be doing the actual delivery of care. We'll have BHTs, which will be certified peer recovery specialists that will be doing the other engagement with the clients, making sure that they're get to the cafeteria, the cafe, and making sure that their beds are made and kind of like all that. So help them get their laundry done. So everybody that our goal is everybody that works for us has some sort of certification and or degree or license to protect. So one of those things. So really the only way that we can hold the field accountable is to have people that operate within their scope of practice. And for us, for our client, for that scope, to be the highest level of care possible. We're still pretty remote, even what MCMC can handle. We're still pretty remote. Like there's a chance that we send somebody there and then they have to get sent from there somewhere else. So we want to make sure that the people doing the assessments and the people that are watching over the clients are not, we don't miss the boat, that we don't miss something. We're going to do it because it's the nature of the business, but we can mitigate any risk to our clients as much as possible.
Have you met with County Alders?
I have. I love that guy. He's fantastic.
Yes, he did.
Great guy. She hooked me up. I got hooked up, and that was great. That was a great meeting. Jane really took care of us, and I think that went really well. I met with their 180 coordinator, which is one of the people that sends people out to treatment. From there, she finds I'm coming by and doing a walkthrough and seeing what we're all about, making sure we're real, which I encourage all of you to do. I'm in town Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, every other week. I came off week this week to meet with you all, so I'll be back here next week.
Now, is everyone there going to be self-admitted they are not court ordered to be there? Is that what you're saying?
No, I think that's a trick question.
Why don't we have to?
I don't need to amen it that way. Some people they could have a love letter from the judge, but that doesn't mean that they're not there by choice. Because the choice would be jail, right? But it's not our job to call the police if they discharge. That's between them and their PO. We're there to provide.
You don't notify the PO, they leave?
So that's tricky too, because we have to have a release for the probation officer. And normally the probation officer will make that a condition of their admittance. But if they don't sign, saying that we can release their information, then we can't release. It's a federal law.
Can't you put that in there that you have to contact the probation officer?
We can't on our side. We can't mandate the courts.
Tell the court they need to.
That we could do. That we could work with the local judge and the local law enforcement community to have that be a condition of parole, is that there is that we can read the letter of release or LOR, as we call it, that an LOR has to be active and on file at all times. The other trick to that is that people that are really treatment savvy, know that they can revoke that at any time. And once it's revoked, I can't then say, now I can't break it. Does that make sense? Like now I can't call the PO and say, because they revoked it.
So that treatment, Sammy, how many times do you take it?
I'm gonna take them a maximum twice. But that doesn't mean it's the first time I took them is not their 16th time.
Right.
Because I don't really, I often don't know the history, right? Like, so usually the way that calls will come into us is, it'll usually be from a loved one. It'll be from a mother or a father or a husband or a wife or a brother or sister or girlfriend. My loved one needs help. And then we say, okay, can you tell me a little bit about what you're experiencing? Let's spend some time with them on the phone. Then what we'll do is we'll say, okay, we have to do this other piece, which is ASAM criteria, which is we need to establish their level of care. And are we appropriate for the level of care? If somebody has seizures when they stop drinking, they don't need our level of care. We need to go to the hospital first and have a 4.0, which is what's an ASAM level 4.0. And when they do that, they'll get stabilized. They'll no longer be in threats of having seizures or dying on us, right? And then it's okay for them to come to us, and then we'll manage withdrawal symptoms from there. So we'll go through that checklist, and we'll make sure that their insurance, that we have some sort of financial responsibility. And then we ask them to do a history. Well, when they do that history, we only know what they tell us. There's no national database that says this person's been in 22 treatment episodes. So, we only know what we know until they decide to be honest with us. So we try to be as thorough as we can. But often, might be the first time with us, but it might be their 12 or 13. Now, we'll tell you, I sat in a classroom just like this during my master's program for to be a therapist. There's a guy telling a story about drug addiction. And he had been brought back with Narcan 13 times. He was sitting up there, 6 years sober, talking to all of his students. And I don't know when the miracle happens for somebody. I really don't. I've been doing this a long time, and I've been in the work a really, really long time. But I really try not to have any prejudices because I don't know when that time is for them. I know my personal story. I know what it was for me. When it was time for me to put the ball down, it was time. And I did. But it's not that way for everybody. Sometimes they bump. You ever been fishing? Your lure kind of bumps along the bottom. And all of a sudden, fish bites. But we don't know if that's the first bump or the 10th bump or no bumps, right? That's kind of how treatment is. We don't get to decide who it's for. We offer it for everybody. We hope that we can make some sort of impact, or at least let them know that it's possible. We don't cure anybody at treatment center. No. If we said we did, we'd be lying. What we try to do is we try to inspire hope. That's it. If you can't have hope without faith, and I'll tell you, I can't think of a better place to inspire faith than in the place the building that we're in. I just don't think it exists. I've been in maybe 50 treatment centers over the last decade that I've helped turn around or start. I've never seen a facility like this. Not ever. Not so much I put my wife out to see it before things started to really change. That father come visit us, Father James came to visit us. I met him on the airplane 2 weeks ago when I flew out. And he's with St. Pius X School in Kansas City. I think the 131st Street. I think that's what he said. He came out today because we donated some desks to him. And I mean, he knew more about everything that existed there than I did. It's his first time on the property. He was just blown away at how incredible the space feels. And it's a place, I'm at peace there. I really feel like it's a place to heal. We look at the original reasons why nuns did what they did. was, to reconnect the spirit and to heal. And that's the kind of work we're trying to do. Can't really heal without some sort of reconnection. So for us, I think this facility is it's tailor-made for the work that we're doing. We will have a full kitchen. We'll also have a catering company that takes care of all that for us. Initially, the kitchen's going to take some work to get it kind of up to speed. So for sure, we'll have a lot of the meals will be catered with snacks and fruits and vegetables. Things like that will be on the ground all the time. We'll have our meals delivered in every day and bring the surplus for. We're going to feed the staff. So whoever works for us, it's free. We'll also have for people that are traveling, I have right now 3 rooms earmarked that are on the ground level. They'll be earmarked for staff to stay the night in case they're traveling from distances that are too far, which is always a possibility given the amount of staff we need, and they're all not going to be able to come from Ottawa or someone may come on the other plains or outside Kansas City or wherever they come from. They'll be able to stack their shifts and stay the night there and eat while they're there. And trying to make it as easy as possible.
Do you have an average number of days that a client stays, depending on what program they're in?
Yes, great question. So detox will be, I think the average is 3 to 5 days for detoxification. I think for some of our long-term benzo users or alcoholics, it could be longer. But insurance, remember, we're being dictated by insurance. So insurance is going to be asking people to get off of detox basically the second we put them on detox. They want those scores, those C1 cal scores. They want to know if they still have any sort of symptoms whatsoever before they step them down to residential. Now, what we see national average is about 21 to 24 days in residential treatment. So between the two, I would expect that we could get right around 28 to 30 days. I would also think there's some insurances that are much better at it and much more caring about their payers, right, which is their customers, and they tend to extend those out, as much as 45 days. That's a rarity. We're also at some point going to be a CCN provider, which is basically will operate with TRICARE West. And so those tend to pay out longer because, public wouldn't be too happy with TRICARE if they weren't taking care of our veterans. We're going to be looking at a veterans track and a first responder track. We're going to try to, I've done this in other states where we sign with the state's the fire department, with the fire department's union, or the police department union. We give them a break, and then they have specialized therapy built around the jobs that they did, which are can be much different than what I do. For a living. So we want to be able to serve those populations as as efficiently and effectively as possible. And some of those you just can't treat in 20 days. Really, the data suggests the longer someone's has had severance from their drug of choice, the better the outcome is. So that's why we're going to have the PHP and IOP, OP services in Overland Park, because the longer somebody stays in that continuum of care, the better the outcomes are. So we want to be able to support long-term. That would be on the longer end, like 3 to 4 months, between PHP and IOP. And OP services, we're also, we're currently looking for sober living for the clients that will be participating. It'll probably be more of an apartment building, more than it'll be like a house. But we're looking. hopefully, we found a space to deliver treatment, now we need to find a space to support those that are doing.
And with some of the other facilities that you've had, when you see as your average census, are you usually at 100% or more? Or?
No, I don't think anybody's really ever at 100. You know, I think they might say we're on a list, but that usually is because of staffing, more so than because of beds. You know, I think that's going to probably be our biggest barrier to ever reaching full census is being able to staff appropriately. We're going to want to have our clients on an 8-to-1 ratio, which is lower than normal, and the reason being is I think it's very difficult for, I don't care how good the clinician is, to deliver a high level of care when their caseload is 12-to-1. Like, I think it's unfair. As a clinician, I can tell you, I think it's unfair when that's been asked of me. So I think that if we hit 50% in the first calendar year, like all the way 12-month rolling year, I'll be pretty impressed. But I would expect us to operate somewhere probably 25 to 30 for most of that year, you know, until we can really attract the amount of staff that we need to run efficiently at even 70. You know, 70 would probably really be our max. The reason being, there's a couple of things that we would reserve beds for, and that would be, we always have to have our 88 beds open. So we'll have 2 88 beds on each floor, or rooms, right? So we'll have those that will always leave open for somebody with that need. We also are in, you know, currently, we're, when we have people under gender reassignment or haven't chosen a gender yet, they still need help. And our LGBTQ plus community has the highest rank, highest overdose, highest suicide rate in the population that I work with, which is already pretty high. So we want to make sure that we have, we'll want to make sure that we have a bed or two open for that and for first responders and veterans. So, you know, I think we're lucky as an organization that we have 40 rooms to choose from, and we're only going to put 2 people per room. By law, we could fit probably 3, in some of those rooms 4, but we're never going to do that. We will always be able to. So I think there's a couple of things that will keep our census artificially low, just because of the nature of the work that we do. You know, we take it serious enough. There's other things other than money about doing things right, and we need to do it right. That answer the question? I hope it did.
Now, you said you had in-house nurses. Will you have in-house security?
So that's also, the answer will be yes. We will have people that mostly externally. Internally, we'll have, you know, cameras, BHTs. They'll all be trained in crisis de-escalation. There's several things that we have to do in order even to operate. You know, one of those is we have to participate and get certified in crisis de-escalation. The other thing is all of our behavioral health techs will be trained in CCAR, which is a kind of another certification. So just because somebody's sober doesn't mean that they'll be able to be a behavioral health tech for us. Right? Like, they're going to have some real training and some real chops behind that. And we're going to be willing to pay not only for their schooling, we'll pay them or for their certification, but also pay higher than somebody that doesn't have it. We'll have special night security on the grounds. This in the winter, so I haven't thought that through. But the gate will be closed, you know, at night, especially after the lights out. But that'll be on video surveillance. We'll have 55 cameras inside the building, stairwells, internal doors, all the outside and inside of each door, internal and exterior views of each door. And of course, the haulers won't be in the client rooms, but nurse's station, front gate, back gate, which there eventually there will be a back gate there, it won't just be straight to the mechanic shop there. which and then, of course, we have the other road that kind of cuts in right. I don't know quite yet what we'll be able to do there. Work closely with Sid to make sure whatever we do is legal. And it's not like a oops. I'm not gonna really operate that way, so I'll be working closely with Sid on everything that we do, making ensuring that one, we're being safe, but we're being legal, we're not. I don't want you guys to come in with pitchforks. You know, I want to make sure everybody stays happy.
To get back to what Lee was asking about the neighbors,
Yes.
and reassuring them that it's all going to be okay. Would you consider having a meeting with those neighbors? and
Absolutely.
Inviting them, would that help, Lee?
So,
So they could ask you questions and maybe look through the facility and get an idea of what's going on. Would
sure.
you be open to that?
Absolutely.
Do you
Absolutely.
think that would help, Lee?
I'll tell you all that I'm an open book. Like I said, I have nothing. I think personally, I think we're doing God's work. I think that we're doing ties in the ministry, like more so than people would believe, right? And so I have absolutely nothing to hide. And I want to be as transparent, especially with them. Especially, I live on a big old farm, and there's a guy that has access. It's not really an easement, it's kind of, it's like a Texas easement, which I don't know what that is. We'll find it out. But what I know is this, that, he could sell his land and make it build 50 houses on this property. That would just wreck my lifestyle. I'm not interested in wrecking his lifestyle. I'm really trying to bring something back to this place, and then also infuse a little bit into the economy. And by the way, hopefully we get to participate in saving us some lives. I have no way, no how I want to keep anybody in the dark. I was kind of hoping there would be more people from the town here, but I could feel some of those questions and be able to be as transparent with them as I'm being with you right now, which is, what's the question? If I can answer it, I want to answer it. If I can't, by golly, I promise I'll find out. Whereas when we get to that place, I'll come back here and let you all know what we're doing. I don't want to do anything in a vacuum. The place just means too much to me.
Yes, it does.
It just does.
Yes, it does.
And like I said, it's
Important part of Paola.
it sure is. It sure is. And that didn't go without notice by our organization, particularly by me. But I said, I firmly believe the people paid for that. Now, there was some money exchanged between the church and then I think his name was Lane and us and Lane and all this stuff, but the people paid for that. I have a big pledges, y'all. So Paola has a historical society. I have a bunch of stuff. I mean, buckets of information that the sisters left behind. And I truly believe that the site really belongs to the community where we're going to try to be really good stewards of it. I know that, coming in, I don't know, maybe 2 months ago, and seeing how things were nice and neat, but the disarray of several areas of the building, the water leaks, the roof leak, concrete foundational work, it's leaking into the ground floor, and equipment that
A long time.
sat there empty a long time. That's one of the worst things you can do, right? And so, as we try to fire air conditioners up, and as we try to fire boilers up, and fire up all the stuff, stuff started breaking right away, and which we expected. We're really trying to bring that space back into space for us. I think it deserves it. I think Paola deserves it, but I think that space in particular deserves to have some stewards that are interested in not just, it being a business, but really caring for it the right way. Putting attention behind every detail. You know, if we were not that type of organization, one, I would be, second, that all of the artifacts and things that exist would have just been rolled over. Because it was well within our rights as landowners to do whatever we want to, it's on our property. But we also knew that wasn't an option. Even though it would drag out an opening date to get all that stuff done the right way, it just drags it out, so. Unfortunately, what that does, that drags us out longer to hire, right? So we can't really we can start some recruiting, but we can't really get people working yet until we have a building that we can get licensed. So some of that doing it the right thing is costing us dearly. Because not just in spent revenue, but in unmade revenue.
What is your plan over the day?
Well, it's been moved now. It was September 5th. I don't see any way this year. I don't see any way that can happen. I'm looking more. I think we pushed to November to be a soft opening and then probably a grand opening. And we'll have to have, before we get on insurance panels and have enough, that funnel gets big enough for us to try to fill that center as much as we can. We need to have, clients that come through the program so we can prove that we do what we say we do. And so it's not really like a soft opening in a traditional way. There's just enough so we can check out those brand new tires and make sure we're not gonna have a blowout, right? Like we're gonna go out and just make sure everything's good. So that if something is leaning like, whoa, we gotta correct something that goes off sideways. If something happens with the caterers, we have a COVID pandemic, something like that we're not on the hook with a bunch of clients and a bunch of staff, and now we're just letting everything off. So we'll have kind of a soft opening, make sure that everything works the way it's designed, and that our programming is good, and that the state is happy with what we're doing. And then we'll get Joint Commission accredited, and CARF ASAM accredited, and then we'll work on our insurance panels. We probably won't have any insurance panels until beginning of second quarter and the first quarter of 22.
We do have another facility that is sold by us, one of them, state hospital.
Is that Sunflower? I've heard of them, I haven't been out there yet. And I plan on going out there, but there was a person in my position before me, and I kind of want to let the dust die down a little bit before I head out there and introduce myself. We have, and we're November at earliest, right? So I'd like to have someone present back as well. I'd like to go out and visit, but I'd also like to invite them out and see what it is we're doing. I think that given the opportunity, we would see that it's really two different clinical models entirely. We're going to have your traditional CBT and DBT type therapy, but we're also going to have an entire room that's going to be sanitary therapy. I don't know any place in the country that's done that yet. We plan on having horses and equine, and having an Egalo therapist and an equine therapy. We have a lot of things that we're going to put forward in utilization of space. Well, what we have is we have plenty of building. We have plenty of dirt or grass right now. And how do we best utilize that for our client base? And I think a lot of people do traditional therapy, and I want to be a little bit on the fringe of that. And I want to offer as much as we can in a facility that size. I think we need to. I think Sunflower, I don't know much about them. I know that the new people that bought Sunflower and the people that own us are buddies. So there shouldn't be any bad blood. If they're buddies, we should be able to get along just fine. And I'm not particularly, I don't really see it as competition. I see it as collaborators. I really see that in every 8 minutes, somebody overdoses of drugs. Every 8 minutes. Just in the time I've been here, we've lost 5 people. That tells me there's plenty of need on the board. There's plenty of people that need help. We're gonna have a high clinical side and a high behavioral health side. There'll probably be probably not before the end of 2020 or 2022, that we're offering behavioral health stabilization along in our detox for. That's not to step on anybody's toes, but that's honestly, there's still a need. There's still people that go unhelped in behavioral health. It's not like the first thing we want to do, but we're gonna already have our license fee with substance use disorder as a primary and the comorbidity or coexisting condition. Where we go up on that ladder will be on how we work with IPC, Dr. Edma, his group, and being able to see what their brushstroke looks like on helping schizophrenia or schizoaffective personality disorders.
Well, and I think one of the concerns that, because the rumor multiple is pretty.
Oh,
big
yeah.
here, So.
I'm interested, I'd love to hear the tea.
So I think one of the concerns is the people that leave your facility, that they're successful and they actually contribute to the community, not a drain on the community.
Correct.
So there's people that are concerned with success rates and, making sure people that come out are actually gonna be helpful. We don't need more people running around that you don't see a lot of it here, but there's already some.
Sure.
So just, bringing people from the metro down here and they don't do very well and then they're just running around Paola.
Yeah, well, obviously that's not our model, like I've said, our hope is, we usually operate on about a 70% continuum rate, which is pretty high because if they don't stay with us, then our goal is going to be to take them to the airport, and have them go back to California or Nebraska or wherever they're from, right? So with that high of a continuation rate in our continuum of care, what I would expect is that my hope is that Paola doesn't feel any difference other than on family weekend when the Paola Inn is sold out, because we have people coming to see their loved ones on that. One weekend a month, we're gonna have a family weekend, where they may not even see their loved one. The work might just be with them. Which normally needed that first go around anyway. But that would be my, that's ideological, I know, but I couldn't do this work if I wasn't ideological to begin with. So I would say that, our goal is for them to never really just be ever let loose in Paola, ever. And there should be no reason, unless they came from Paola or Osawatomie, or, unless they're from this area, then there's no reason for them to stay in this area. And I don't want to overstress, and not that it makes that much of a difference, but these will all be cash paying insurance driven, so most of the people, if they can't afford it, then I'll pay for them to leave. It's pretty simple. Like we have a shuttle that picks them up from the airport, well, just don't take it right back. So that doesn't concern me, that the fear would only be if they ran off and jumped the gate and jumped over the fence, and now they're running loose, and we do our protocol, and we call the police department, and they go out and they search them, and they find them. What happens from that moment will be, you can't stay here. You can go back to treatment, or we can take you to the airport. And we'll be happy to be the ones to take you to the airport. We're a hands-off facility, so I can't jump the fence and tackle them and run them down, nor would I want to break therapeutic rapport. But the police department's pretty good at that. They're better at it than I am, for sure, especially with my age. So I think I've already met Officer Gonzalez. He's great. I wouldn't want him chasing me. No way. So he was great. He stopped in and we chatted briefly. So see that as nearly as a threat as, and I can understand the fear, so, and I definitely don't want to be dismissive of it. But our continuum of care doesn't exist in Paola, we purposefully did it for several reasons. You know, one of them is to protect the community and get it. I also want them to feel like they're progressing, right? Like, part of this is actually in treatment. We want the loved one to feel like they're transitioning and they're getting better. Well, getting better for a portion of them would be that they're no longer attached to the Ursa. Like, I love it, and we all love it, everybody in here loves the building. But I promise you, most of the clients that come and stay there, they may learn to love it, but they're gonna love home a lot more than they do here. Most of our outings won't be in Paola. Most of our outings will be outside of Paola. For that very reason too, we don't want them to get familiar with the area. Yeah, so that's one of the other things that we'll be doing. However, we will want to collaborate and work hand in hand with the local community and animal shelter that needs help. You know, you got 6 people that we can run over there and help clean up dog poop and pet puppies and wash dogs and then come back to the facility. If you have an elderly person that has horses and their horses need to be sidewalked, I want to be able to do that for them. You know, if there's a project in the community that the porch needs built or something needs done, we want to be one of the first places you turn to as a resource. And because the only answer I could say is no, but maybe we buy the materials. Like, I don't know what that looks like, but we want to be part of the community. We don't want to be like, this is an armed area and then nobody comes in. I don't know. I've never seen anybody come in or out. Like, we really don't want it that way. But we don't want people overly familiar with the area. They're coming into the restaurants and eating. That's not gonna happen. They won't be eating at the local restaurants or like doing that kind of stuff. Our programming doesn't set up that way. But individual service projects, we'd be super interested in helping the elderly or special needs or animals, you know, anything that we can do to help that specific demographics in your community that maybe you all, we've done a lot of heavy lifting for in the past. We can help with that load, we'd be more than happy to. And our staff, you know, the people that are going to work for us are going to be super excited to do those things. Whether it's a soup kitchen on Thanksgiving or whatever it looks like. They're going to be in treatment on Thanksgiving. They're going to be in treatment on Christmas. Like, that's just another 24 hours on their notch, you know, as they look towards leaving. We're going to do some things to make it kind of special. But what's really going to make it special is that being able to help others, because for a long time they were taking. We're no longer taking. They were giving. We have something to give. It's very valuable. It's just, so we want to make sure that we involve all of our clients that way if they're being clinically appropriate. And that's why I said about 6, because that's usually about what's clinically appropriate out of 25. Might be 6 people, you know, somewhere in that neighborhood. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So will you be relocating to here? when this
Me
opens?
personally, no. I'll be hiring an executive director that'll train under me, and his job will be to do exactly what I've told you here today, or we'll find somebody that can and will. I don't have a lot of, like, there's only one way to do this right. It's pretty easy to just do it right. But if you start pulling in all these other like kind of crazy stuff, then I'll politely ask them to go to the airport. But I do think we'll have somebody. We have a couple of candidates that we're looking at. Some of them are local. We're very, it's a long process to get hired on an executive level with our firm, because once they pass all of us, they still have to go in front of the owners, whether that's through Zoom or in person, and meet with them. So it's not like I just get to hire and fire all crazy willy-nilly. Like, I don't get to do that. And now nor would I. So it is hired by committee, which sometimes takes longer. But we just want to be right, you know, especially if we're bringing somebody from, let's say, crazy guy from Texas coming into your community here. We want to make sure it's a good fit. Same thing if we're bringing somebody in from New Jersey or Miami or somewhere, like they're gonna have to love Kansas, or I don't want them here. This is kind of a long haul for us.
Where's all your others?
Our owners,
How many
So,
other, where do they live?
Well, there's really one owner. And he has two houses. He has one in Miami and one in New York, which is why I just picked on New York and Miami. And then they kind of go from there, like Ohio, the poor kind of exists in Ohio, Indiana, Pennsylvania. So some of them are pretty north and one way south, and then there's some that kind of come from, what it's called Midwest, which I don't think is West back, but, Indiana, Ohio, that kind of area. But they're committed, and if you all wanted to look up the parent company, it's called GMF Capital. And, you can see that there's honestly, I'll talk to you guys. I know we're being videoed, and I'm okay saying this. We're talking about with the sale and the renovations. We're talking about a $10 million project. There's only a few people in this world that can just gamble on $10 million. And GMF Capital has the kind of backing to be able to do that. So I'm very grateful and thankful for them to be able to give us this opportunity to go kind of do something really cool.
Big investment.
It's massive. And it's a big place, it's almost, I walked my Kathleen around it earlier today, and she's like, it's overwhelming. Yeah, but, how do you know? One bite at a time. 30 minutes, beautiful. Yeah, and we just do it. Today's flooring. That's our big thing right now, is flooring. We've got painters almost have the second floor done. Excuse me? Gary from Gary's Flooring, which is right there. He's from here, Paola, who's doing our flooring. Mission Painting, which I think is out of Olathe, but I think Lonnie is from Osawatomie, he's the foreman that's on the job. So like, as much as we can, that's who we want. It's like, I want to build relationships that, because right now, I'll be honest, I have a stack of papers like that, and I have to, every bid I have to pour through with fine tooth comb, compare them against every other bid that's stacked that high too, because it's a big building. I like to build local relationships where I know we're getting what we're paying for, and we don't mind paying a good price for it. We don't have those relationships yet, it's a brand name, and I think they'll come over time. We did try to get local for our air conditioners, but our air conditioners, it's an 81,000 square foot facility, so not a lot of people, that's old. So not a lot of people wanted, we called, whether they come out or not. I don't know if any of y'all know Kate, he's our facilities manager. Kate is, he's from Osawatomie, and he tries, God bless him, he tries really hard to hire local, because I think it's also his kind of friendship network, like he wants to know local people too. He's super friendly. But a lot of people will pull up in the driveway, go down and look at our chillers, and then turn around, get in their truck. Drive on, see it. It's a big facility, so I don't blame him, and I actually kind of respect that in a way, because at least we're not biting off more than they can chew. Doherty Steel is we're working with them to do some safety measures for us on the rotunda. So, we're really trying at every step of the way to use local, or as local people as we can. Some jobs are just gonna be where we're gonna have to we call it the city, and now sound like a local. Yeah, sometimes we gotta call the city. No, I think sometimes we're gonna have to stretch that to try to find somebody that can fill our need. But our first call will always want it to be local. I believe it's the second I'm meeting with the Rotary Club, which I'm really looking forward to. I wanna, I'm sure there's some more questions and maybe different questions that I'll have to answer at that.
You're a nice group.
I bet they are. I've never been to a Rotary Club that wasn't. So I'm looking forward to that. I wanted network within our community more than I want to be operational.
So whenever you get your executive director hired, then what will your role be?
So my role, obviously, I'm gonna have to train them. So to hear, you know, and every site is different. No matter what we're doing, I'll probably then really, for the most part, be looking at Overland Park in getting that site up and running and finishing up sober living and doing that. I'll still be here. And then I'll probably come out here, you know, more instead of 2 or 3 times a month, it'll probably be closer to 1 or 2 times a month. We have a place that we're also opening in South Carolina, we're opening in Virginia, and we're opening in Ohio, all within by the end of 2022. So if they're anything like this, which I don't think they will be, it keeps me pretty busy. And so as this gets more, the training wheels kind of taken off, you know, the less I will be here, but I'll still, everybody here will still be reporting to me. And I will be out here at least once a month to make sure that things are happening the way that they said. And when I'm out here for once a month, I'm out for 3 or 4 days. So it's not like I come down for a day and, oh, yep, the building's still standing. And sure enough, it'll be 3 or 4 days and I'm in the work, making sure that the programming is exactly what we said it was gonna be. I'm kind of a stickler on insurance contracts. So when we have our panels with the insurance companies, I'll make sure that our license and our credentialing, so our license with the state and our credentialing with Joint Commission or CAR, at least have, and our OTP program, and all of those things that are what we say on the website is what we're delivering. And what we say in our P&Ps is what we're delivering. If it falls out of that, then I'll be here more, and then it won't be good.
You have a place in Overland Park when you said you'd be doing it?
We
Or are
do.
you purchasing one?
We are purchasing, and I don't have the address yet. I don't have the address handy,
Okay, I just-
but I can make sure that, yes, we do. It's as, like this is a standalone building, but it's parking lot, it's not green space like we have. But it's a standalone building, I believe it's 12,000 square feet, which will give us enough room to handle, have some representatives from IPC actually officing out of there. Plus being able to see have our own doc and nurses there and see our own, you know, our own clients and offer PHP, which is basically 30 hours a week. And also offer the either 15 or 9-hour track for intensive outpatient, or all of it, you know, it's big enough that we could do it all. We're currently not, it's not in the plans here anyway to do adolescent, so we won't have, you know, that going on. I think the state regs, they have to be like 18, we can't, some states allow for 17 and a half, but I think the Kansas state regs are 18, so everybody will be. Or any other questions? An awfully quiet back there, man.
Janet?
Okay, so I take a look at notes. You gotta have a question. Miss Janet, do you have anything for me? She's a rock star.
Yes, she
She
is.
got me hooked up like super right away and got me, she's introduced me to Paola, and it's been fantastic. And,
Janet knows everybody.
she does, and
Not a job.
yeah, you do a great job, and I'm very, very grateful, you know, for, you know, everybody I've spoken to in Paola has just been as nice as can be, and what a great community. We're driving around, we live in a much smaller town than Paola, my wife and I, and she was just blown away with how pretty the neighborhoods are, and how nice it is here. I don't want to do anything with right now. I don't know what we're gonna do with the priest house that was on the corner. I don't know if any of you have been in there. I don't recommend it.
And then when you start working on it, I'll get a house, because that always happens.
Yeah.
We're right
It's-
across street.
Oh, you're right across
Yeah.
the street. Well, it's in pretty disarray. I don't know that it's salvageable.
Mhm.
I'm gonna rely on some architects to kind of call the shots on
Continue bulldozer.
It's
it.
tough.
That might
I don't think
be,
anybody's attached to it, that I know of.
I don't either.
I don't think anybody's attached to it.
so we'll have to,
It's not like there's.
Yeah.
no, there's some neat architectural salvageable stuff in there, you know, if someone was into that. I think there's lots of architectural stuff I can pull out of there and finish out the barn that exists, you know, like, sort of timbers and stuff that aren't water, rotted. But there's not a whole lot we can do for it. It's interesting, it looks so much better on the outside than it does on the inside, so it's one of those things, like, I'm nervous to do anything, because for people that haven't been in it, they're like, why did they tear that down? That's where the priests were. Whoa. I just think like, yeah, so I don't know if I need to video everything inside first, but it's pretty scary. And if we gotta do something about the tunnels, too, that go back to the Ursa. So, we'll have to talk. We'll have to talk. I thought it would be a great opportunity for the fire department to practice egress and fire, all kinds of good stuff there. Get it done. They didn't seem to be set up, so it's gonna fall on me to figure out something for it. That's all we can do, really. I think we're working on some ideas, you know, that might be beneficial to the community as we kind of look at that space next. That won't be in the fenced-in area. It will cut that place out. And we might be able to look at some opportunities for the community to have an enhancement based with the community center. So I think
We need a parking lot.
I've heard that. I've heard that. So
Right up front.
just so you know, I was brought aware of that about a month ago. And I think we're working on a plan that we can help.
Appreciate that.
There's some beautiful trees that are right there that I'm really concerned about losing. But if we can work around them, I think that we could really kind of come up with a plan that it could be win-win for the community and for us too, so.
We're big on putting trees in parking lots. So they look nice.
Good.
You don't just have a
Well, this will be nice then.
chunk of asphalt.
So, we've talked a little bit about it back and forth. Nothing formal yet, but I think that's something I'm sharing with my owners, that I think it's something that we need to do, and something that, we kind of tie us into the community a little bit, to be honest, you know, like good roads, all that. And it's needed too, because it's a safety concern, I think, with all the cars parked along the road there, so I think it could very well be a win-win, which is rare, but I think we can. Definitely, we're definitely open to it on our end, and then whatever we can do together, will be fantastic. Again, I don't want to fence 38 acres. We need to figure out ways that I don't have to do that.
There you go. Do you have any plans for that acreage off to the side there where that pasture is?
No, you know, we plan on that very first pasture that's like shared, you know, really from like the barn
Uh-huh.
up to Monica Hall.
Uh-huh.
But then that, you know, like, we are interested in using the barn because we plan on having horses, you know, and maybe some chickens if they're legal in the state. In the city
Probably not.
limits.
Rooster.
No roosters, just hens. But I don't know what the city ordinances are. I'll have to rely on my good friend across the table there. But we do plan on having horticulture as a big part of I'm not gonna say a core pillar, but definitely a pillar of our clinical program, horticulture group that gets people, you know, their hands in the dirt and sand. So that first pasture for sure, we're probably gonna use that first one right across from the parking lot of Monica Hall. But after that, that's a lot to deal
It's a
with.
lot of land.
Yeah, and again, I'm not a huge fan of those love letters from the city, so, we try, the landscaping, to keep up on all of it. We know we have some of it earmarked as, hey, I believe you have to be local, because it's right down here. We have a local guy that comes and cuts hay, and forgive me for not knowing his name, the big pastures, cuts hay on those. But I do think that there's, I wouldn't be remiss to say that, we could definitely find some green space. As long as it stayed that way. I don't know.
Operational way up.
That's right. Well, in Texas, we just have cows and they love it for us. We don't
We used to have cows there until the person that did that rented it out to someone else, and they put in a way too many cows, and there was drowning. And we've not been any livestock there since. That was just a few years ago.
Yeah,
Took advantage of the situation.
I don't know that it'd be good clinical work to have people in early recovery thinking that they can go out and do some cow tipping like the old days. That probably
Yeah.
work out too good for us. Anybody have anything else? Thank you all.
You're right.
I'd like to take up your meeting. And
It's probably better than what we're gonna do next.
I'll be flying I'm flying out tomorrow, but I'll be back on Sunday evening. Out first in the morning on Monday. So if you guys need me, I'll be there. You can swing by anytime. Kate's there if I'm not. He does a pretty good job of being pretty well. If you haven't seen it, I would suggest you get in there and see it before the diocese does what they do.
Sisters used to have their open house Christmas day. And they'd always had lots of things there for sale, and everybody would go this time. See that, and to buy them things. I still got one of their socks. I bought a sentimental thing there last year.
So I'm hoping, I know that Sister Ava Maria means business, so I'm hoping that she will get in contact with she's already done a bunch of research on some of the, to Arkansas. And then some of those that used to be part of the parish, or that order. And one that's local, and maybe I think she said she found another one that left the order and got married. But she did her research before she ever showed up yesterday, which I thought was pretty impressive. She already had like a line on some people. We do want to get, not only let them know what's going on, but get some perspective, on the whys and how some of it, some of it's like, how did this happen? It's amazing. So we're looking forward to that. And of course, once the diocese have taken what they feel is relevant, then we'll reach out to the Paola Historical Society. See if they're interested. We have blueprints from 1896. We have blueprints with no longer the auditorium, the gymnasium that's gone. We have original elevation blueprints and floor plan and all that stuff, like hand drawn on blue paper type stuff, and then the clear paper, or the kind of yellowish paper that's suspension. We have all that stuff. I'm a kind of a geek when it comes to that stuff, so I really can get lost and lose focus on my task. So I gotta make sure I stay out of the safe room as much as possible. Yeah, so thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. Hope to see you guys all soon. And please don't hesitate to come by and visit. We really enjoy showing it off, even if you've seen it. When it gets its new coat of paint and its new flooring, we'd love for you to come by and see it then, and we will have an open house. And we also probably have open house / career fair at some time. I'm not actively gonna go after anybody's employees. We are gonna post on Indeed, we are gonna post on whatever those other sites are. And if somebody applies, and they're a good candidate, then I hope I don't step on anybody's toes, but if, we're not gonna actively go to anybody's other center or any other behavioral health centers that are around here, not even substance use disorder. We're not looking to poach anybody. We're really looking for people that really want to make a difference in this space in what we're doing, and often that's not somebody that's disgruntled at the current job they're at. They're disgruntled to us. So there we go. Thank you so much. Thanks. Have a good day. Guys, take care.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Of course. You guys have a good one.
Brian, are you leaving? Oh, okay. I'm not sure you want to hear the rest of this meeting. Can you go home now?
Hey, but the budget discussion.
Yeah, what about the budget?
Ready to
I
move on?
will show you, I've got my on. I have got my 2021 budget. I have written all this off on sheets, I could understand. I went through everything, I have stapled. I think I'm done. I have got 5 pages of questions.
5 pages?
You think I'm kidding? Look at this, look at this. No, I got more than that. My mistake, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I started on 7 in my.
So you plan on being here till midnight?
No. But I have done all this. Okay. Here we go.
So at the workshop that we did 2 weeks ago, not quite 2 weeks ago, presented a second draft of the budget. Tonight, I've just provided a light version of the overview sheets of the general fund, which just shows revenue and expenditures, and then the employee benefit fund and the bond and interest fund. The general fund, we still have that a pretty good imbalance there. But what I've done, I've been able to, the mill levy, with the way this is set up, the mill would stay relatively, basically flat. I think it's actually like a 0.02 reduction, but it's basically a flat amount. Now, valuation did go up, so that would mean people's tax liability for the city would be higher than it was last year, but the mill does not increase. To do that included, I had increased the library's revenue a little bit, which affected the mill, but I decreased that just a touch by 5,000. I had increased it by about 10. And the employee benefit fund was reduced down because we're transferring more money in there from the general fund. And so I'm using the mill that we normally had in there to put in the general fund so that we can show that that's a general fund expense. It's not just kind of lost as employee benefit. And that fund covers all of our health insurance, our workers' comp, FICA contributions, capers, KP&F, all that kind of stuff is what comes out of there. And the other thing is looking at the bond and interest fund. I tweaked that down just a little bit because we have to be able to carry some of that so that when the sales tax drops off, we still have some money that we have to pay for some of the police station, and I think it was a series, I'm trying to remember, 2014, is that right? Series that went with Rockwood and some Baptiste extension. That goes to 25. I think the police station goes to 26. But I was able to tweak that down a little bit, and we'll still have the necessary balance to be able to make those payments on into 25 and 26. Any questions so far on that? That also includes, for the general fund, increasing that transfer from water and the one from wastewater, 50,000 more from wastewater and 40,000 more from water. That kind of equals out kind of what we had been taking out as employee expenses. That we then now have shifted back to the general fund. So that was a change made. And then the other thing is I reduced some of the capital outlay for street work, but more of that is put into Fund 17, which we use some federal fund exchange money as revenue and our gas tax money as revenue. So just doing more of that work out of there and doing more just maintenance out of the general fund streets budget. And then the one thing that I'm not, that I did is I took out all the MRF savings. That doesn't accomplish what you need to for equipment replacement. One thing I think that we could do as an alternative is leave those transfers in, but reduce the budget by that much within those funds, knowing that if we get to the end of the year and we can't support that MRF transfer, we don't do it. And if we can, we do it. Any questions on that?
What's our mill levy?
It is 43 something.
43 what?
Well, just give me a second. I'll have to get it. The 2020 mill levy was 43.381.
The what?
The 2020 mill levy, which is what we're at for this year, I realize it's a 21 budget, but the way it was 43.381. The way this is set up now, it would be 43.354, which is
43.354.
is what this is based on now. Yeah,
But because of the new,
the valuation,
What's the valuation, the assessed valuation?
the estimate in June was $61,816,612.
So that's still an increase.
Yes.
And is the budget, I mean, the public hearing for the revenue neutral, is that just gonna be 6? Is that gonna be set for 6 o'clock?
Yeah, it's set for the 6 p.m. on the 14th. What we would do, we get, at the meeting on next Tuesday, we'll set the budget hearing, which will have to be after that revenue neutral rate hearing. Set that hearing on Tuesday night as well.
I've got 50 papers tonight, I'm so tired. I can't. I've written down here though, on the wastewater utility treatment, deposited interest. In 2021, it was 239,215, and the proposed for 2022 is 398,25. That's a big jump,
Yes.
increase 151,000.
And that is because when we refinanced those bonds last year, we took that savings up front. And so we got savings for this budget year, but then next year it's kind of like a regular payment.
Okay.
That's correct, isn't it, Stephanie?
We got 100,000 going for general fund at the community center. Open center change. 25,000. Oh, in the cemetery. There's a thing on there that's got for 2023, 20,000 for capital thing for new real estate and building. What's that got to do with the cemetery? That capital outlay? 27
On,
on the cemetery, 01007.
okay, but which line are you looking at? The new real estate building? We've got it, that's a placeholder for the 23 budget.
That is. What is
It's
it?
a new cover for the building.
Oh, down there
Yeah.
at the cemetery, okay. I'm so tired, I can probably excuse. It's 5:30.
You know, and this is, you know, council's comfort level with this. The way it's proposed, I feel like our 2021 budget will come in better than the shortfall we have predicted. And I'm pretty confident that 2022 will be the same way. I'm continuing to monitor the 21 budget. I think we're going to be fine. My thought is,
Taxes up.
I think if, as we do that, we monitor, if we start seeing issues this year, we can start making adjustments. And if we get to the end of the year and we were deeper than what we thought, we come in January and we sit down and we have hard discussion about, okay, we passed a budget, but we've got to modify that budget. How do we do that? I guess that's where that's my comfort level with knowing, kind of seeing how the budget's performed over the last several years, and kind of with some of the predictions or projections that I've been able to do. I would be comfortable with that. I understand the council's not, but we can go back and do that work now and get this modified. But my concern is we may modify it for and not looking to.
You said you have built-in roof transfers that don't actually have to happen.
Well, what I did with the general fund now is I took those out. But I got to thinking today, I was visiting with Kirk. I said, well, one thing we could do is still budget for those, use those as offset some of the other spending so that this number doesn't change, but we still have those that potentially. So But if we know that, hey, these other line items that we reduced, we know we're gonna be over because we just won't, we won't do deferred transfers. We just wait till the end of the year to do those.
Our taxes are still gonna go up dramatically if we're looking at assessed valuation and that mill. People's taxes are going to go up. And I can't say that I'm comfortable with that. Not that it matters.
What would be your comfort level?
Well, they're going at 51, almost 52,000, that on the evaluation, right? And that's a lot. And then you would think that if your assessed valuation went up, because that's what I heard from a lot of people when they got their valuations this year, was how much the increase was. And I can understand because of what property selling for. I understand that. But when your mill goes up, then it still goes up more. You're still increasing that your taxes. And you think our sales tax has been high enough, and our assessed valuation in the mill, it should go down a little. I think it didn't go down very much for the increase in the assessed valuation. Does that make sense?
Well, I think part of it is you have you've got increases in personnel that you budgeted in. I mean, that's 70% of just the general fund
Yes.
budget.
Yes, it is. Yeah, I saw the employee benefits. I added them up somewhere and I'm thinking, wow, those are really went up the benefits thing.
And some of that is trying to get that balanced out, but that's where those transfers are kind of trying to say it's a different way of taking that expense from that utility. But the idea is that we know that what that cost is of that personnel now a lot easier than when it's spread out across multiple funds.
Right, and I knew that's what you said you had done, and I got so busy, I was gonna add it up, and I just did not get it done, I just ran out of time. Anyway, that is just a concern to me, that I know that that's going to be December. People get the tax statement in November. It's going to be an issue.
Yeah.
And I just.
And that's, there again, I'm fine with taking direction. If we want to go and reduce the budget, we can do that. And we can be ready by Tuesday if we need to, but I need to kind of have a direction of what the.
Maybe it's just me, but I just think that, I don't know, I know our sales tax has stayed up well and is doing well, and this is where I put all the transfers from the employee benefits, and if they were all up, but like I say, I knew you did a different way of doing that, and so.
And that's where then we were able to decrease the mill from there. And it's increased in the general fund, but overall that mill has stayed about the same.
Yeah, it has stayed about the same, and that's what I'm saying with the assessed valuation, and I know that everything goes up every year. I'm very aware of that. But I still just, I guess I can't say I'm comfortable with that. And that's probably just me. But
And I did increase the sales tax in the budget from what we had been budgeting. I'm still
But you
concerned.
know, you have to be conservative.
I still want, because last year, our city sales tax generated, what went into the general fund was $876,000. I think we budgeted 810 for this year. I think we may be above the 876. I've got 840 in the 22 budget, because I just want, I'm good with moving it up, but I don't want to move it so high that if we don't get it,
Then we're gonna be in trouble.
then we'd be in trouble, so.
That's right.
And the county's sales tax was kind of the same way. It was at, we budgeted 570 for this year. Last year, we generated, what, 635. We got 600 in there for this year. So just trying to make those a little more realistic.
Well, with the way things are right now, it's hard to know what's gonna sustain.
No, that's
It's kind of all
right.
over the place.
Yeah.
That's why I say.
Even the cost of, even our expenses, so it's
Right.
just,
And that's why I think about the sales tax is doing well now, but you don't know how long that's going
Right,
to
we don't know
stay.
if it's gonna sustain.
That's right, you can't. It's not money in the bank.
Because everything's very. volatile.
Everything is just, the shit it is, council and fire. Like the price that real estate is bringing, just
that's
incredible.
like, I think probably, you know, we're not the only community that's gonna be dealing with that. It's crazy everywhere,
Yeah, it is.
real estate's crazy everywhere. And it'll go back down. I mean, stuff's not gonna lose, maybe not go back down, but at least stabilize eventually,
Right.
hopefully.
Yeah. Council. Anyway, I just. Haven't got a report on the census yet.
Well,
The
I
census-
feel like I don't know that I've seen anything final.
Did we stay stable?
I think what I heard we haven't decreased, but I don't know that for sure. I don't know that I've seen a final report. I sat through a long webinar on the census stuff, but it was like how to access their new website and download different information. And I don't know that at that time, I thought it was going to be a report about what our census was, and it wasn't. So I don't know. Have you?
I haven't seen.
I haven't seen it.
It's September.
It'll be September seventh.
Can't get much traction. Yeah.
Yeah,
Ending anywhere, so.
Right.
okay.
Well, I hadn't heard anything, but I thought, well, we don't follow it, but you know, they're talking about people not always filling out.
I know that, I feel like Miami County had one of the better response rates. Did you see any of that data? I felt like it was what it was, but I felt like when you looked around what other counties were doing, we were
Yeah, I think we had
one of
a,
the better ones, so.
anyway, that's just my thoughts. I just all feel pretty positive. Anyway.
Anything else on budget? Council meeting items. Are we good to move on? Sometimes I feel like I move on, I hope somebody else say.
I told you what I think, so there we are. Not real good with it, but there we are.
Got the joint resolution prepared for the Recreation Commission question. Basically, it's, I think, I got it to Lee, he's reviewing it. But I used one that, I kind of used what Lewisburg had and Augusta had for their resolutions. We kind of mirrored that, and The idea is that the school board will consider that on 9th, Monday. Consider it on the 10th, assuming we vote to approve that, then that will be sent to the clerk and get that question on the ballot. STO and UPOC, that's the standard traffic ordinance and uniform public defense code. I think you
Yeah,
take,
there's
like, just
tiny changes made to that. Others, I sent that to Eric to review. Since, other than what we already changed.
so that, do we have those yet?
Those will ship next week.
Can we do this before we get the books?
We have the electronic version.
Okay,
That counts, and they sent us these little changes, so that's what I did, Eric. I sent it to them also.
okay.
After
So the plan is we'll have that at the meeting on Tuesday. Region J hazard mitigation plan. This was a regional hazardous mitigation plan that was developed. I think they worked through that in 2019. The idea was in the spring of 2020, everybody was going to get this approved and adopted, and then something happened, and then it didn't get done. So I think COVID got in the middle of that and didn't know until recently when there was some thing with KDM and they were saying, hey, you don't have this, and then they got to look at like no agency. I don't think anybody in Miami County had done that. So that's just kind of a standard approval of that. And that basically, the big thing is that really opens us up, our citizens, they become eligible for FEMA funding and some of those programs through emergency management that otherwise, if we don't, they don't have access to. Planning Commission, buildable lot size, Randy?
Yes, so our current regulations require 6,000 square feet for lots that are platted before 1983 to be buildable. And in the established part of town, there are quite a few lots that are just not quite big enough. And so we have had in the recent year multiple variances to the Planning Commission for buildable lots that are too small for it to work. So to alleviate some of the variances and to allow more consistency during the review, the Planning Commission recommended to have certain standards for staff to approve instead of going to the Planning Commission. And then if staff doesn't feel it's adequate to be built on, then they can still go to the Planning Commission if they'd like. All of the regulations are taken directly from the LDO. They are not recreated, they're just taken from different aspects. So all of those will be given to you in the packet very simply.
So it has to be lots that are older.
No, right now,
are older
right
size.
now, any lot that is platted prior to 1983, and that was the adoption of the very first LDO, they have to be at least 6,000 square feet. Any lot that's platted after 1983 has to be 8,500 square feet to be able to build. And in the old part of town, there's a lot like 5,600 square foot lots that are just a little too small. So with the housing shortage, there's a lot of people that want to build on those. They want little 2-bedroom bungalow homes that would fit on there within the required setbacks, but they still can't. But they have to go to Planning Commission for variance. And that's just been very recent that we've had, I think, 3 in the last couple of months. So they're like, well, let's just try to get this alleviated. So I think the regulations they have set out for staff approval will alleviate a lot of the inconsistencies and make it go a lot quicker and allow more.
That little one across the street from me. Just-
Yeah, right?
But anyway, here we are.
Traffic control device schedule. So we approved that. One of the recent meetings. That included there was some things that had been on there since 2010, but the signage hadn't been up. We put the signage up and got several phone calls, and one in particular on Shawnee. And so I guess to kind of open up that discussion on that one, it's between gold and silver, to move it from the south side or the north side to the south side, would have less impact on the neighborhood. I don't think from a staff standpoint, the reason to put it out there, if it's on one side or the other, it doesn't really matter for us. I have visited with WSP, who's helping in confluence with the comprehensive plan, and said, hey, is there some guidance you can help us with? And I think they're going to, as they work through the plan, will help us kind of develop something that we can kind of use as a framework, and we're trying to make, hey, does that street need signage? Maybe it doesn't need signage, or we should really think hard about doing signage there. But
I think for me, when I talked to Mr. Chapman and Mr. LaFrance, the two people who were complaining the most about it, specifically Mr. Chapman with his wife runs an in-home daycare. Looking at the street, nobody ever parks on the south side of the street. They almost always park on the north side of the street. Very rarely do you see cars on the south side of the street. It's almost always on the north side of the street. So when we put the sign up, the decision was made 8-10 years ago, and we really don't know why. It was just what we decided to do, and never put any signage up. So when we put it up, it was very irritating.
That was on Miami Street,
Now, Shawnee,
Shawnee,
between gold and silver.
that house, yeah, that house across the street's got that long driveway, yeah. So.
Yep.
And there's also that little business, I don't know if they there.
So I think for me, looking at the street and looking at the usage, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't just move it to the south side if everybody's in agreement with that. Because like I said, occasionally you might see a car parked there. Normally they're on the north side. It's,
Nobody parks there, why put it up at all? Hear that?
well, like I said, it wasn't like we could find a very specific, it has to be one way, it has to be no parking on the left side because of specific reasons. So
Why can't you just eliminate it? Why does it have to be there?
well, I mean, it could be. I think the concern. I mean, I'm just thinking about the next people that come in to work to live in that property on the south side, or whoever. If they all of a sudden start parking on there, then we end up. I mean, and I think part of that it was to try to help give a little more breath, especially for snow removal, and that was probably, I would assume, was the original intent.
right.
And so, yeah, I mean, and that's something I think that may be something when WSP kind of gives us some recommendations, is we kind of do a holistic review. Maybe we try to figure out what's the best approach for us on that. Because I think at times we feel like, okay, we know this street is bad, or this section is, and we kind of solve it there, but maybe we need to think more holistic. And that's something I did hear when I had conversations with them. Well, if can't do it here, let's do the whole street. And so maybe we need to think, if we're willing to say we're going to do it in this one section, we do it for long sections of streets, so that we're really, we're not doing it by block, because
Well, it was a good one. People, if you didn't want to walk out there. Do you know, as much as I'm around town, I don't ever have trouble walking that street, Shawnee, Miami, none of those. It's the end of wheel. And some of them along in there, I'm telling you what, those are a challenge.
that should be, because we did from Bremen to hospital on the south side, and I've driven it a few times recently, and it's been clearer that it's a lot nicer to just drive and get to the intersection and make your turn and all that. So.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, some of them. No, over this.
Like my own sampling, I'm still working with Ted Harris with the Kansas Biological Survey to finalize that scope and get that agreement done. Because KBS is kind of connected with University of Kansas, the agreements are kind of all that work has to go through KU. So I'm hoping that we can have all that finalized so that we have that on the agenda for Tuesday. It may be that if I feel like we're close, but I don't have it in hand on Friday, we'll have the summary out, but we won't have the agreement. We'll have to have that Tuesday at the meeting, and if we don't have it, then we just pull it in.
I'm glad to see that happen.
Then acknowledgement of the Emma submission.
Ray said that we'll have that by the meeting, so.
That's just kind of a standard practice to
Is that
disclose.
every year, don't
Yep, yep. And then one that wasn't on your list that I need to add is donation of police equipment. So with the purchase of the new cars and getting them all finalized and outfitted, we have some excess surplus material. And then we also have a taser that we have. So we generated a list that we'd like to donate to any other agencies, kind of put it out there and then they can request. So I've got a release of liability that I had Lee review, which the idea is that if council's comfortable with it, we would have council just approve the list and the release of liability in general. And as people, if somebody comes in and says, hey, I'd like to have that taser, could I have that taser, then we'd have them fill out. We would just do it as a kind of an office task to fill out the release of liability so that we don't have to come to council each time.
So anybody should buy a taser?
What?
Anybody should buy?
Well, no, it would be for another law enforcement agency that maybe can't. That's not your Christmas gift, Artie.
We want the taxi.
I sometimes think I could use that.
You can actually buy them yourself.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Do it to myself.
Your turnaround with taser. Did you really ask for everything?
Ones you can buy are actually more powerful than the police ones. For the simple reason they will put out a longer
Oh, really?
Really?
electrical impulse.
They're over this far. How big do you have in the car? They're over.
I seriously have to change these.
Yeah.
No, well, I thought when you said that, I guess I would.
No, and this would be just for
Oh, no.
other agencies that maybe couldn't afford or could utilize it. I'm not sure how they would kind of put that out there, but say, hey, we've got this kind of stuff. If you're interested, let us know. And then we would just, like I said, if council approves that release of liability, the overall list and the release of liability, we would just work through that as we.
Is there a lot of equipment?
No, it's just kind of, I look at it, I don't feel like it's a lot, I guess. You might feel like it was a lot. It was just some of the stuff that was outfitted the car. Some of it was old that they just updated and some of it just didn't quite fit with the new, even though we kept the same model, it didn't quite fit with from model year to model year, so. Any other questions on that? Information stuff, I have the invitation from the actual invitation from Crothers. I sent you an electronic copy for their 100-year celebration. So they've got an open house going on next week, and then they'll have a bigger event or a anniversary celebration on Friday. So if you're interested, let me know. We can RSVP if you need to. So
For the open house, do you just go show?
I think that's just, you don't have to.
There's
RSVP.
hours on there, is it their league?
Yeah, it's
There are hours.
9 to 3.
9 to 3 on, I think it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah, I think they're just gonna have snacks and whatnot, they get pictures out of past projects and things like that.
Actually, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, so.
100 years is a long time. isn't it?
Yeah, that's a pretty good accomplishment for any
That's
business.
very good, yeah.
The Union Pacific Big Boy Steam Engine is gonna be here on Wednesday, the 11th, from 11:15 to 12, so if you want to go see the big steam engine, it'll be down at the tracks, hopefully not blocking the road, but.
Well, there you are.
Other
Yeah.
people,
Then, the half-cent sales tax kind of spending plan, still about 2 to 3 weeks to get pool information, more detailed with some costs on that. I have had a conversation with Greg Berenberg with Newman James to kind of talk about what that financing might look like and what our amounts would be. So I'm kind of working on trying to help give us a framework or scope to look at those and get all that information compiled. So that may be something we want to consider, maybe have a special meeting sometime in August, just to go through that discussion, at least initial discussion.
And I'm assuming we're not far enough along with any of the discussions that we had in executive session last meeting to have another executive session on that yet.
No. Police chief search, we conducted 5 interviews today. Randy, Vicky, and I, and then I used police chief from Paola, came up and sat on the panel with us. Feel like we had 5 pretty good interviews. We've kind of got 3 that we identified to move on kind of to more of a final phase. And we'll kind of work on doing some preliminary background checking on that before we kind of get all those final plans done. Kind of want to make sure we don't stumble across any major red flags before we say, oh, well, these are our 3 favorites, and one of them should be our favorite. So no, I'm sure Brian would like to have that least part of it, but we'll try to limit that.
Let's get it figured out first.
So that'll be the idea. We'll try to get put that process and a selection made by the end of the month. So projects, talked a little bit about the aquatics. They left the online engagement up through the end of last week. I got all the physical stuff that we had at the library, at the pool, collected at the beginning of the week. I can't guarantee that some little kid didn't go into the pool every day and said, hey, I need a green dot. And they went over to their favorite thing and put a green dot on. But I was very surprised. There was a lot of participation at the pool, even at the library, and there was quite a bit online too. So I think that was, I think we got a lot of good input that they can kind of filter through. I do think Lazy River is leading the charge. So we'll see how that develops. The Lake Viola Dam geotechnical study, the lab has been a little slow for Ron Intertech, and so they're working through that. They hope to have a draft report by the end of next week for that work. Comprehensive plan conference will be here on the 14th and the 21st at the farmers market events, and they're kind of working on all the information that they continue to gather and will continue to gather to develop kind of an initial draft plan. I can't remember, so October they were kind of thinking we would have that presented to us. Baptiste Drive was pretty well done. I think we've got to still have a few kind of punch list items that we need to kind of clean up a few things and do some backfilling, but it's opened up and drivable. And Hedge Lane, Baptiste Drive right turn lane project, I think they plan to pour the kind of the concrete for the actual lane itself this week. So we're going to do it today.
It's boring out there. Haven't they?
Yeah, they've got the curb and that kind of stuff done, and they had I know this weekend they had
They work Saturday.
the actual lane itself looked like it was ready to pour, and I'm not sure which day they were targeting to do that, but.
The last week they come up and go around, they have poured that.
So they got the lane turned, okay, so they must have done that probably today or yesterday.
It'll still be open before school.
That is the plan, we have told them, that needs to be the plan, we have reiterated that must be the plan. Yes.
Better plan on a right turn out of Cottonwood.
Into school, the
18th,
18.
yeah. So. Other than that, that's all I have for you.
I saw something here in the campus magazine, it's the rural housing incentive, and you maybe knew on this already, but that Senate Bill 90 is a rural housing incentive district program that allows for the construction cost of renovating second floor downtown buildings into housing. And it allows the rural housing incentive districts in the city with a population less than 60,000. We use that.
Yep, that's something that we're kind of looking into as an option. The way I understand that, that kind of operates almost like a TIF for residential housing. So that might be an option.
Well, we had some interest in that, you know, and I was reading through these. And anyway, I saw that and I thought, oh, okay. It's interesting to learn about the Kansas fires and leadership act.
This one with the reader at Brothers. When you walk in the door, you see her.
Yeah, yeah, she'll know when you walk in. Her office is just like right around the corner.
My introverted self doesn't want to walk in there and see a bunch of people I don't know.
There's not, when you walk in, there's really nobody there.
So I walked in there a time or two when I went to see Alan about something, and I don't remember seeing it particularly.
No. There used to be a little receptionist, but they remodeled it. So, yeah, we go on it, so they-
How many people are in there now? In that building?
That may be high, I'm not sure.
Maybe it's 5%.
30 sounds good.
Well, because they got a full basement, they got 4 people in the basement, 5 people on the floor. It's closer to 15. Upstairs, so downstairs is Carruthers, the middle floor is PIMCO, basically does human resources and accounting for Carruthers and CB and Triangle. And then Alan's got an office there, and then CB Construction's on.
That's what we're there. Good.
Okay.